Hello and welcome to SaaS Marketing Insights, the show where we ask SaaS founders, CEOs, marketers and investors about the lessons they've learned in their quest to grow their companies. My name is Paul Stevenson and I'm founder and CEO of SaaS marketing agency 47 Insights. On today's show, I have an interview with conversion copywriter Sophia Dagnon. Hope you enjoy it. Sophia Dagnon, conversion copywriter. Welcome to SaaS Marketing Insights.
Thank you. Really happy to be here.
So you're down in Houston, Texas, I believe.
Yeah.
And so where are you originally from? Because you don't sound like you're from Texas.
Yeah, right. Like my Texan draw is just not coming in at all. It's really disappointing. It's kind of a long story. Bulgarian by birth, but I've moved around a lot, and I mostly grew up in Scotland, so my accent is like this really weird mixture of like Scottish and like random things I pick up from TV.
Okay. So you're a world citizen.
Something like that. Yeah, that feels a bit like, yeah, why not?
Yeah, I think we all are now anyway. Tell me a little bit more about that journey where it got started. Specifically, I'm interested in how you got into conversion copywriting and how you came to specialize in SaaS and tech.
So it was actually a bit by accident. So I studied archaeology at college. And
okay.
I mean, clearly it ties into tech completely.
Yeah, old tech.
Well, yeah. So my specialization was paleonutrition, and so it was just, I studied a lot of bones and like DNA data. That was pretty much my last 2 years at uni. But after graduation, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, because for archaeology, you kind of had to go into, you hadn't really had the choice of academia. So I could do a master's and then a PhD and just stay in that bubble forever. Or you had industrial archaeology, which is in the UK. Basically, before you can start building a site, you have to do an archaeological survey. And so you're there working with all the builders and all the guys, and your job is to like try to spot any bits of pottery or like the remains of an old building. You're like, no, guys, stop. Like we now have to excavate this. And of course, they don't want you to find anything because it slows down the building process. So you have this really kind of difficult job where you're managing a lot of people and trying to like preserve history at the same time. I was like, I'm not sure I want to do that. And so after my husband graduated, we were like, you know what? We don't know what to do. Let's just move to the States because that seems like the thing to do. Yeah. And so we're like, right. The only place that we can fly into with a one-way ticket is Florida, because everywhere else is super expensive. Let's fly into Florida and we'll use our savings, we'll get a car, we'll drive to Texas, and like we'll figure it out. So we did that. Landed in Florida the day the government shut down.
Oh.
Great, because my husband needed to get his social security number and stuff because he like lost his documents a bit. And we're like, we need the government to be open to actually be able to leave Florida. This is not great. So we're stuck there in a hotel room for like a month, waiting for the government to open. And as soon as that happened, we're like, right, okay, now we can get a car and we can go to Texas and we can find work. And so we did that. But
how long ago was this?
This was about 5 years ago.
Wow.
So drove Florida, Texas, went to Austin, found an apartment. My husband found work. And I was in a position where it was taking my documents a little bit longer to come through. So I was sitting there waiting for my green card. And you know, like when you're somebody who really likes to work, you feel completely tied down. You're like, I can't do anything. What am I doing with my life? Like, what's going on? I'm just waiting on the government to send me my documents. They're just sitting there. And it was really weirdly difficult. Like you would think time off work. It's like you can relax and read books. But at the back of your brain, you're always like, I should be working. Why am I not working? Like, what's happening with my life? But during that time, I had the time to research a lot of like things, and I found out that you could write online. It's like, that's cool. Like, I never thought of that. I'm good with words. Like, that's something I can do. So once my documents came in, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try the whole freelance thing. We've just moved here. Like, I might as well do that before trying to get a corporate job. So I started applying for like a bunch of gigs on Upwork. And at first I got some like pretty low paid ones. I think I wrote a blog post for like $2 because I was just so excited that this existed that like I had no idea what you could do. I was like, you paid me $2 for like words? I can do that here, have words. And it was pretty awful. But and then from there I started building. I was like, oh wait, no, like if I do a good job, I can get a lot more money. And so you start realizing what the actual potential is. And then you also start realizing that it's impossible for you to keep up writing a lot of words for like $6 an hour because your brain dies. And from there, I just started leveraging each gig into better gigs. And eventually I started working for, started doing content for this social marketing management SaaS, Mave Social. And that was kind of my first foray into SaaS. And their marketing manager just found me through Twitter. To this day, I have no idea how, but it was just one of those like awesome serendipitous moments when she was like, hey, you're good. Do you want to write content for us? And I was like, yeah, like that sounds great. You guys do cool stuff. And so I just leveraged that into working for like a bunch of like SaaS companies in the same space. And so I was really into the content space, doing like blog posts, raising my prices and kind of realizing that, hey, like I could actually have like a comfortable career out of this because I'm providing value and this is like really working. It's getting good results for them. It's getting good results for me. And as I went deeper into the space, I found out about like conversion copywriting. I was like, wait, like you're going to pay me to spend my time like doing research and like analyzing customer data and pulling in Excel sheets. Like, this is what I did in uni. Like, this is the stuff I'm really good at. Like, this is a job. And so as soon as I found that out, I was like, yeah, this is like my dream career. I have to do this. And just went from there.
Fantastic. That's and told with such enthusiasm as well. So you start writing, you start out copywriting, and then you realize that there's this thing called conversion copywriting, and you start specializing in that, and it's your dream job. I mean, everybody wants to do their dream job, right?
Right.
So take me through the sort of things that you write as a conversion copywriter, and you know what your process is, because I think, as you alluded to, there's quite a lot of research actually involved. It's not just like you sit, have a cup of coffee, think hard, and magic words come out. Do you want to tell us what that process is for you?
Yeah, I'm a bit ashamed to admit, but I really used to think that is what writers did. So I was like, yes, you know, these brilliant writers, and I will be that brilliant writer one day. Just sit down and then like magically everything just flows and there's no need for editing and they just know everything intrinsically. And then as soon as I started doing this as a job and actually speaking to a lot of these like really great writers that I'm out, I was like, wait, these guys actually spend like hours and hours and hours talking to customers and reading reviews and looking like doing heuristic analysis and looking at like a Hotjar and heat maps and Google Analytics and all these things. And this is where they actually get their data from. So most of my process comes from just because when I first started out, I had no idea how to build out this process. So I was doing a little bit of research, but I was mostly just trying the whole, I'm good at making words sound good, so here's some good sounding words. But that's not really enough for conversion. So I started really getting into things like Copy Hackers and Joanna Weed. Like that's a fantastic resource for like anybody in our space. But I started reading her things and kind of just speaking to her about her process and speaking to other people in the field. They were like, yeah, so first thing, you need to speak to the customers. So a big part of my process is just interviewing customers and talking to them about their problems, talking to them about the stage of awareness they're at. So, because when somebody comes to your page or when somebody wants to buy your product, everybody, like, they all convert at different points. And for them to actually get to the stage where they realize that your product is the right fit, they need to see the right words and they need to understand that basically you can help them get the outcome that they want. And the only way to figure out what that outcome is, instead of like sitting there and trying to like guess what people feel, is to ask them. So interviews started as the foundation of my process. And then on that, I layered on customer surveys, because interviews are awesome, but it's not always possible to do a lot of them. So you can do like 5 to 10, and you get into this point where they're great for messaging, but you fall into the law of small numbers. So the information you get it's great for using expressions that people are going to convert to, but it's not as great for understanding exactly what different segments need, just because you have such a small size. And so surveys, because I like to get about like 200 answers, ideally at least, they give you that wider perspective of what different segments are feeling. So I added that. And so then you start analyzing the surveys and you start bringing different things. And after I was like, but I do want to know how people react on, like, say, if I'm writing a web page, I want to know how people act on the old web page. So that's when I started adding things like heat map analysis and looking at Google Analytics and figuring out how this traffic is acting, like what they're clicking on, what's bringing in there, when they bounce, if they bounce completely or if they go to a different page. And so all these kind of pieces made up my research process.
Fantastic. So it's interesting what you just said there about, qualitative research versus quantitative research. I guess one of the problems for many SaaS and tech startups is that if they're quite small, they don't actually have that many customers. So being able to get quantitative feedback from 200 customers would be, outside of the realm of possibility for them. I guess all you can do in that instance is the qualitative kind of customer interview, right?
That's where review mining comes in.
Tell me about review mining.
Yes, review mining is an awesome tool that you can basically use even when you have no customers. So Amazon is just the easiest place to start with that. But let's say you are like a product, having trouble thinking of a product, but let's say you're building a product that helps somebody, like an email marketing product, because that's easy to talk about. So if you're building an email marketing product and you have no customers to speak to, you head over to Amazon and you basically start looking for books that solve the same problem that you solve. I don't think an email marketing product is a very good one. Oh, yeah. So let's say you're building a product that helps people get their dream job.
Yeah.
So you start looking at books that address that. So like there's a bunch of books on how to do good in interviews, how to get your dream job. And you look through these and you start looking for themes. So what questions people are asking, and especially themes that tie into it with the software you're building. And I like to just copy and paste these into a giant Excel spreadsheet. And then I analyze them in the same way I would analyze survey data. So at the top, I usually just put the question that like the feedback answers. So for example, let's say part of your software is to help them get them to the interview stage, like get past the algorithms and stuff. So I'll start basically compiling the data that helps me do that, and then you start analyzing it, and that helps you pick out the themes. And after you've looked through books on Amazon, you also start looking at competitor messaging. So you can see what messages your competitors are actually using, just to understand where the market is at this point. And then you can start looking at reviews and basically the customer testimonials they're getting, and your reviews in their like blog posts. You start going through their Facebook page, things like G2 Crowd or Capterra, and that just gives you a really good insight of where people are in your marketplace. And then you can use that as your initial messaging. And obviously, once you grow, you then get the custom survey data to grow that.
Yeah. So once you've done the customer research, then I guess that's when the wordsmithing comes in, or is there another process? Is there another stage after that? I guess you've got to review all of that with the customer, right? With your customer, your client.
So it actually depends on whether they want to. I like to have, so after the research, I like to have a meeting where we just talk about everything we found. But I've had clients who are like, look, we trust you, we trust what we found, like just, especially if they come to you with an idea of what they want the page to be or what they want the page to contain. It doesn't always make sense to review it, but yeah, ideally you talk through the research, you talk about what you found, and then you move on to the copy phase, just so that they know what to expect at the end. Because I find that one of the biggest kind of obstacles to like between, say, conversion copywriters and the client is that if you don't communicate at every stage, they have one idea of what you're making and you have one idea of what you're making, and that can clash. So this helps avoid that.
So has there ever been an instance where you've done this initial research and you've actually found something that's completely changed the direction or significantly changed what they were thinking in terms of what they were going to put on the homepage or their messaging or their positioning just through customer research?
Actually, this is it's kind of an embarrassing yet funny story. I recently did a project with a client where we did a messaging marketing report. So it was basically taking all this research and then pulling into a messaging report with like ideas for different headlines and stuff they can use, because they're at a stage where they're trying to really nail down the messaging. But before we did this project, we also did an email onboarding project. So I redid the email onboarding sequence. And now after this project, I'm like, you know, some of the messaging that we use for the onboarding sequence, like we should probably change those.
Yeah, that's a case of putting the cart before the horse.
So yeah, you do have stages where like you worked on projects before and then you do a complete messaging thing. You're like, hang on, like the customer data says we should actually be focusing on this stuff instead.
I guess that leads me to my next question, which is about common mistakes that you see SaaS founders or marketers using when it comes to conversion copywriting. Say they haven't employed somebody like yourself. They're bootstrapped. They're starting from nothing. They take a wild guess. They write something. Are there some common mistakes that you see, and just as soon as you go on a website, you talk to yourself?
So yeah, I think so. But again, with this one, I kind of have another story, because so we all have, I think as a professional in your field, you have kind of like almost a subconscious list of best practices that you kind of believe that work all the time. And like, I mean, obviously on a top level, like you're aware that there's always exceptions and that everything should be tested and that it's all process. But recently I found out that about myself, that there are certain things that I believe. So I was working with a client a while back and they're running ads. And so I clicked through on their ad because, I go to their website a lot, so naturally the ads target me. So I clicked through the ad and the ad takes me to the homepage. And I was like, that goes against the best practice. Like an ad should always lead to a landing page. Why are they doing this? And then I spoke to them. And it turns out that actually for this level of awareness of the ads that they're running, sending people to the homepage gives them better results than sending them to a landing page. And this wasn't something that like in my little bubble that I believe possible. And I was like, wait, so that's really interesting. Because at least in my space and like in my little bubble, we kind of tend to go, no, ads lead to landing pages, like that's it. And so when we talk about common mistakes, I suppose the biggest thing is to follow best practices as if they would work for you.
Yeah.
Because
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Following any kind of dogma, just following somebody else's rules without actually thinking through and without measuring it or testing it is a favorite challenge of mine that I see with a lot of companies. Oh, well, so-and-so told us to do this, or we read it online that this was the best way to do it. It's like, did you test it?
Yeah, and it's so hard, especially when it's something that say like you've done yourself in the past and it's worked. So of course your brain is like, I did it, it worked, therefore it's great. And then people you know and admire have done it and it's worked. And so it's almost hard to step away from that and be like, hey, like best practices are an amazing place to start. Like they give you a far better start than say trying to like figure it out all by yourself. But from there, you need to then start adapting them and start thinking about how it's going to work for you. Because if it's almost you fall into a place where you start thinking of yourself as a failure if like their best practices aren't working, because like these really smart people are telling you like this brought me a conversion rate of like 210%, and you're like, I should decrease mine. So like, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah, I'll tell you a story, a reverse story. So I had I read or heard on a podcast someone saying that a longer headline on a Facebook ad will always pull more, and they were absolutely categoric about it. And I was very skeptical when I was listening, but I thought I'd try it. So I was running this campaign, and I just added in another variation based on the same creative, but with a longer headline, and it tanked. It actually pulled half as well as the one with just the short headline. So I'm not saying that that's the rule, but I'm glad I tested it, because who knows until you run the test.
Right, because it really depends on your audience, and like even on the level of sophistication they're running at. Because say if you're marketing to marketers, like we've seen so many of the ads that we are weirdly skeptical, but also kind of an easy audience to market to, because I think you always have the best practice in the back of your head. So you see somebody following the best practice and you're like, this is a great ad, like I must convert to it. But other people are not as weird. So that's why
I've never felt that. I've never said this is a great ad, I must convert to it.
Okay, I have. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, I'm way older and more cynical than you are. Cool. So you're writing a lot of web copy. You're writing like onboarding emails and landing pages. Is there anything else?
No, that's pretty much it. Like that's the stuff I tend to focus on, just because I feel that that's probably the best investment, for people like me, because otherwise, like with a lot of your other pages, yeah, sure, like they're important, but you don't necessarily need somebody who's conversion focused on them, just because that's not their purpose.
So let's talk about the conversion side of things. How do you find out from your client which works best? So is it a case that you're creating the copy, you hand off to them, they're building it into their landing pages and their drip email campaigns, and then you just get some feedback on what worked and what didn't work?
It really depends on the client. I like to become friendly with anybody doing the testing and the CRO team, and to kind of make myself available, because I think as a conversion copywriter, I think part of your job is to try to provide as much strategy and as much help as possible, just because you have that experience. And it's just nice. Plus, I mean, I'm invested in my own working. Yeah. So I want to be as involved in the testing process as I can, just so that we can adjust. Because sometimes, and this always hurts a lot when it happens, but you're going to spend all this time researching a page and building a page, and it's going to bomb against the control. That's going to happen. And it's awful. You feel like a complete failure when it happens to you. But when you are involved with the CRO team, then you have an opportunity to fix that and to optimize and to figure out where in your hypothesis you went wrong, because copy is really a process. And I think this brings us back to the mistakes. It's assuming that once you write the website, once you write a landing page, that's going to be your landing page forever and ever, and it's going to work. It has a half-life. Because the market changes, your customers change, technology is becoming more prevalent all the time, so we start responding to different messages. And so just being involved in that testing process helps me improve my work and helps me improve results. And it just helps me feel better about my work as well. Yeah.
So on a more kind of personal, professional note, I guess, do you work mostly from home, I guess?
Yeah, I do. I'm in the process of actually turning my office into something that looks nice, but it's like a wall and a desk and a lamp.
Good for you. So how do you cope with that? Because I know writing is very intense and you need deep focus to do it, but sometimes you can go a little bit stir crazy, right?
Definitely. I've tried a bunch of different things. To be honest, I'm still trying to find the thing that works for me. I've tried having ridiculously strict rules where I'm going to be in my office from 8 until 6, and then I'm not touching anything. And that didn't really work for me, because my brain doesn't always work properly for me till 6. I'm a bit of a night person, so sometimes I do some of my best stuff at 10 p.m. on the couch or later. And so those strict boundaries, I tried them, I tested them, they didn't work for me. I tried having really loose boundaries, those didn't really work for me either, because then you end up like watching Netflix 5 hours. And that's not great. So now I'm trying to come during my day, but if I find that like my brain is just not working, I will allow myself like a break. I'll step away, I'll have a coffee, and then I'll try working from a different location.
Oh, the old location fix.
Yeah, weirdly,
it works,
it can be effective. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the oddest thing. I do it myself sometimes. I just get to the point where I can't work at my desk at home, and so I can go out, but I can work somewhere else. I can work in a coffee shop.
Yeah, it's so weird. But like your brain's just like, hey, this is interesting. Like it's new. We can do stuff here.
Yeah. Sophia, sorry. Thank you very much for your time and your insights into the world of conversion copywriting. I mean, I think it's a fascinating and very underrated profession, and you know, I think there's a hell of a lot still to be learned. I think it's quite a young thing, really. I think there's just so much more work to be done in this space.
Oh yeah, like definitely. I'm really excited to see how it goes. And thank you so much for having me. Like it's been awesome chatting with you.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Sophia. For more info, please visit sophiadagnon.com. For more info about this show and to get our links to iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher and YouTube, check out www.47insights.com. And if you have any SaaS marketing insights that you'd like to share on the show, please get in touch. Until next time.